lives one day at a time. Kimmy Kim and Elations Radio. They're here to get your day going fine. Kimmy Kim and Elations Radio. Kimmy Kim and Elations Radio. Kimmy Kim and Elations Radio.
And here's your host, Miss Kim Robinson.
He's my rosé, my rosé, Who woke you up this morning with a roof up over your head? That's my rosé. Who provides the source of your income, give you that bread? That's my rosé. Remember when you didn't have a thing, you was out there lost? That's my rosé. Then you received double, he increased you like a bounce. That's my rosé. Hey, that's my rock. My God's so good to me. Blessing after blessing, even ones that I can't see. I can't thank him enough, cause he done so much, he's my foundation, my God, he holds me up.
He's my rock. He's the reason I can't stop giving him praise until I drop. He took me from the bottom all the way to the top. That's why I tell the devil, get back. Strapped with the word, click, clack. And you ain't never gotta wonder where my faith at. I can do all things through Christ. Did you get that? Chase God, not money, that's true facts. I'm obese with belief, yeah, too fat. My foundation too strong so it can't crack. I'm cool when life gets rocking, no ASAP. He laid down his life like a flow, man. That's why I go so hard and never go back. I'm never searching for a blessing at all, cause he's my rock when my back against the wall.
The true rock, you should smell what it cooking. Baking up joy like peanut butter cookies. Get a taste of him and you might start juking. Get the shouting hallelujah, got everybody looking. That's okay though. Yes sir, he's solid. 10 toes down, he endows me with knowledge. Provide strength when I'm weak in my body. I bounce back with a fight like Ali. The Roche, gotta know he don't play. The big homie on the block with the most game. I just lean on him like a brick wall. Got your back when you slack, make the big fall. What a big dog, thank you for the sacrifice. Thank you Lord for giving life and sending down the Holy Christ. A refuge and fortress of solitude. I'm flexed up with a Samson like attitude.
Yeah, my worship, my rock. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Let's all give a hand clap for God today. Oh, wow. What a wonderful week this has been. This has been a challenging week, and God has continued to bless. God shows up when we least expect him, I think. I think we give up too soon. Today is Friday, September 25th, 2020. And wow, another week, another hour of relentless pursuit with Minister Sedric. I want to say hello to everybody. Jason, Terry, you guys on with me today? Y'all on here tonight?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How we
good
doing?
to hear from you guys. It's going good. It's going good. Yeah, ain't it funny when you go through some things, you always want to hear the familiar, and it always makes you feel better when you hear the familiar. I just want y'all to know that's how God works. I was thinking about something a little earlier today, and I think it was in Matthew 12. I forget the exact verse, but talked about a bruised reed. I think it said something like a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Man, it just made me think about something. As I read the whole thing, I thought about community, thought about friendships. I thought of what we have here today, and man, it's just awesome. But then I had to go and I was thinking. I'm jumping around a little bit, but it's one thought though. I had to go back out into the world, you know what I'm saying? So when I started thinking about all the things that are going on here in Kentucky, here in Louisville, and man, I had to think back about how Jesus was a servant, and for me, knowing that he was a servant, it just gives me hope, you know. And no matter what goes wrong in this world, no matter how much trouble happens here, there is hope. And so, and the reason I know that Jesus gives me hope, and he is hope, is because it says in the word, it says, I've overcome the world. And so, thought for this evening, I really, there's a lot of things going on, but I have hope because Jesus, he overcame this world, and he overcame the evils and the things of Satan. So with that being said, Jason, Terry, man, fellas, y'all know a lot of stuff has been going on in the news. Of course, you guys know that. And I was thinking about something earlier today, and I texted you guys an article. And, you know, I started thinking because I was talking to a couple of friends of mine. They have the talk shows and things like that. But I was talking to them, and they really lean into the things that are happening in our community. Again, since I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, we have those of us who are in Louisville, we have firsthand knowledge basically of the things that are going on, and the issue that's closest to our hearts here is Breonna Taylor. And so with that being said, I was talking to some friends, and we started talking about, well, they keep talking about the police and Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. And my big thing is we don't have to worry about it. Blue Lives Matter. You don't have to tell me if they matter because they treat them like their lives matter. You shoot a cop, see what happens to you. You know what I'm saying? If you do make it to jail, you're gonna stay there until you die. They're not gonna let you back out. Cop killers don't get out of jail, right? But when you're black and you're in our community and something bad happens, you get shot, you get profiled, you get beat, you get abused, you get talked to crazy, treated like you a less than human being. Nothing happens to the people who commit these atrocities. Check this, unless, of course, they themselves are black. Usually, if they themselves are black, and let's go to Minnesota, black cops from Somalia kills a white woman from Australia. Man, I think he got something like, he got life in prison, right? He was a black cop, and they did it quickly, right? It didn't take no 5-6 years. It was quick, fast, in a hurry. Amber Geiger, Dallas, Texas, goes into a black man's apartment, shoots and kills this black man. It took a couple of years to get her into court, and then she only got 7 years. At least the white woman was beating on the police car in the dark alley. Botham John was in his own apartment, minding his own business, living his best life. She goes in his crib, kills him, and says, "Oh, I thought it was my apartment." So anyway, with that being said, I'm not going to get too uptight because I am upset, and I do want the world to know. We wanted to talk a little bit tonight, and tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about, I forgot how I started the topic, but what was that topic? Y'all got to excuse me. I forgot how I worded it, and I want to word it just
police
right.
Reform.
Two gentlemen. Yeah, there we go. Police reform. Thank you for helping me out. See, I know I needed my brothers. If we could reform our police departments, what would it be? What would it be like? What would police reform look like in your community? And I wanted to really talk about this for as productive as we can be for this next hour, gentlemen. Is that okay? And I just wanted to kind of open it up. Police reform. First off, let's define what is police reform. I kind of just want the audience to understand what we think police reform is as we refer to it. Like, I can be all fancy and say the reformation of a police department and or a system, but what do we mean by police reform? I'm saying police reform. How do we fix the police department so they work more primarily for the community than they do for the department itself?
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah,
but
okay, y'all got different definitions? Y'all got different definitions?
Well, to me, I think police reform is to really allow police to become that force that we all depends on to kind of keep our, to bring us peace and security in this crazy society. For the people who choose to, the really bad people, not someone who's selling loose cigarettes, but those really people who are a threat to our society, to our way of living, that they stand between us and them. And
okay.
So when we talk about police reform, it's about a more what's the word I'm looking for? Not like practical, but they're not so rigid in their enforcement and what they do.
Okay. All right, Terry.
I think it's more of a line of they're more nimble, for lack of a better word, more nimble in what they do. If it's a domestic dispute, if it's a domestic dispute, they work with a particular agency or a particular group within the department that's got the skill set to deal with domestic disputes. If it's something more serious, dealing with where someone has been physically, attacked or whatnot, then and it's maybe as a result of a domestic dispute, then you have both. You have the police and that other group working together. So it's become they're not the catch-all. The police is not the catch-all. What you're doing, when I think about police reform, you're helping them become more nimble and more flexible, and you're adding components that would help them meet the community's needs versus thinking that the police are the catch-all.
Okay, I mean, and that all makes sense. I just want to put a definition out there, or put out what we're thinking about it, because definitely I think reforming our police departments is really the key. I know we've heard people talk about defunding the police, but really when I hear defund police, I'm actually hearing reform the department. Terry, you covered a number of issues in what you were saying, and Jason, you covered some issues as well. But one of the things I was thinking off the top of my head when I think of reforming police departments, and on a serious note, reforming a police department, I mean, I'm talking about from really, there used to be a time when police walked the beat, right? And I'm sure in some cities that they still do, some municipalities, they still do walk. They still do get out and get to know the community. But increasingly more what I see in our communities is police drive around in police cars, and when they get out, it's like it's me against the world, like they're in a war zone. I don't mind tactical gear, but in my neighborhood where I have small kids, is tactical gear really necessary? Is it really, truly necessary? So when I started thinking about police reform, as I was thinking about how we were starting tonight, I was just thinking about, let's, like you said, Terry, let's soften that outside, that exterior. Let's become friends of the community. Let's become pillars of the community so that the community feels that you are their friend. People get upset when there's a crime committed and a witness who's a witness to the crime doesn't say anything. And if you live in the state of Texas, you know that they have the legal right to, check this out, most people don't know this, to put you in jail if they know that you witnessed a crime and you won't talk about it. They have the legal right to put you in jail until you decide to talk about it. And so I think that we need to, one of the things that I would love to see our police departments do in our neighborhoods is to become friends to the neighborhood. I get it. A lot of people don't like police. Yes, go ahead.
But can I say, I want to throw something in there with that. It's one of the things I've learned, even like here in Louisville, is that a lot of the police, that people that are on the police department, they don't live in the areas in which they police. And so, and that's a problem within itself. And so I remember when I was younger, there used to be a county police department and there used to be a city police department. And they used to, and if you worked for the county, you had to live in the area in which you were going to be policing. And when they merged the police departments, they took that out. So now you got people that live in the south. Huh?
How has that changed the community? As far
how
as
does that change?
Yeah, how has
when you're familiar with your community, when you live in your community that you're policing or the area that you know the area, you know the people, you have vested in there. You are vested because you want to see it safe. You're wanting to do things that are more involved in the community, where it's like it's just not showing up for a job for you. This is where you live. You want to see this become a really good community, and so you're going to be invested more in whatever community organizations. You're going to be, you're going to be enlisting the help of the community organizations or community leaders to help you and help the community to police itself. It is just not one person that's coming in doing a 9 to 5 and then leaving.
Right. And that makes so much sense to me. That makes so much sense.
I think I want to say, I think to go above that, and I think, like you said, when you live in a community that you work, then the people become human to you. They're not just a threat. They're not just a suspect or a victim. They're Joe, they're Roger, they're Mary. They're the people that you've done life with, and I think some of those nuances of personality, right? If I walk on a scene and someone's talking loud and being really aggressive, if I don't know that person, he could be seen like a threat. But if it's someone I hang out with, you're like, man, there's go Mike again. Mike just be loud talking all the time, right? And I'll approach him different, and I'll interact with him different, and he becomes human to me, And so I think that is important. And it's interesting that when we talk about reform, we all said the same thing. We talked about softening, not being so rigid. And that's one thing I'll tell you I get with a lot of officers. They're just so rigid and just, they don't seem like people. They feel like, they almost put on this air of like, look how tough I am. And I'm like, man, dude, just relax, calm down. It ain't that crucial. We're all people here,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, and I think it brings a level of accountability and also transparency into our officers' lives, because now we get to see them as human beings as well. It's always a two-way street, and I remember growing up as a kid, and the police, when I would get in trouble, if they stopped me and my brothers, they knew my dad, right? They knew our father. So rather than run us to juvenile or run us downtown or write us these big, long tickets for doing so, they took us right to our dad because they knew he was going to handle the situation. But also what that did for us is that brought a level of accountability, because now when we saw these police officers again and they asked us a question, we couldn't smart off. We couldn't even run because they knew us. They knew where to meet us. They know you got to go home. And so there was a level of accountability. And also for the officers, think about this. Those officers didn't have to worry about us doing stupid stuff. I mean, we were kids, so we were going to do stupid stuff. But they didn't have to. They weren't in fear of us because we respected them. They treated us with a level of respect. And we knew each other. And for me, the way I remember it, it was more of a mentor type of relationship. That police officer was we did. I don't know about everybody else, but we looked up to those officers. And we didn't have any violent encounters with police officers, so I didn't really have a reason to really think horribly of the police. in our neighborhood. And even when they got a new cop in, everybody recognized there was a new officer. And another thing is about accountability is that most of the police in my neighborhood, they rode two to a car. Very seldom did you see one officer in a car by him or herself. It was generally two officers to a vehicle. And again, accountability arises with that. Now, I'm not from L.A. I'm from Dallas, Texas. So, I don't know what it was like in other places, but that was something for me. When we talk about police reforms, I'm looking at accountability as well. And I think that thing about accountability, think about this. Again, I'm going to use the Breonna Taylor. I'm going to be referring to Breonna Taylor. I'm also going to be referring to George Floyd and a number of, and no disrespect intended because I can't remember everybody who's been killed by police, but some of the other people of color who've been killed by cops. But imagine if we had stricter accountability in the department itself, because I think one of the reforms should be accountability and transparency. Accountability from the standpoint of, let's hold these officers accountable. Listen, if you're a dirty cop and a good cop refuses to snitch on you or hold you accountable, then the evidence that the prosecutors bring to trial shouldn't have to come from a dirty police department, right? I think that we need more transparency in our police departments. The thing about the Breonna Taylor case right now, they sent it to the grand jury. At first, I thought that's the best thing they're going to get. And I wasn't so mad about the decision until I realized, after looking at the news and talking to other people, I realized that, wait a minute, he got charged with wanton endangerment, but it was because a bullet went through the wall through her neighbor's apartment. Nobody was charged with what happened to her. And then the attorney general gets on, and there's absolutely no transparency to what happened with the grand jury. So that's to me, that's one thing. But that's some things that I would change about when we start talking about police reform. I would definitely go to the point of the accountability and the transparency part. I think that.
And another thing, and another thing, I would get rid of that qualified immunity. Is it qualified immunity they call it? Where because you're a police officer, you got this immunity piece. I think that needs to be something that needs to go as well, because what that does, that shields the dirty cops. That shields the ones that do wrong, because they know that you can't prosecute me, you can't go after me if I have that, and all these and some of the other reforms I believe that need to occur is this hope with the police unions. I believe in unions. I'm a big union person. I believe in unions. But when you have the police union has all these extra steps that you've got to go through to get to even remotely even charge
to just get an interview,
another police officer.
Yeah,
to get an interview, right? With the police officer. That stuff, right? That needs to be cut out. That stuff, right? Yeah. When you think of unions, you think of them negotiating labor, insurance, pay and stuff like that.
Right.
But when you start getting into you start laws and things of this nature,
right.
Wait a minute, you're going overboard. What you're doing now is you're creating an atmosphere where the bad cops can hide.
Right, but check this out. As you were talking though, check this out. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about qualified immunity. So of course I looked it up, but think about this. Qualified immunity in itself is actually not necessarily a bad thing. But listen to what it says here. It says that in the United States, qualified immunity is a legal principle that grants government officials performing discretionary functions immunity from civil suits unless the plaintiff shows that the official violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. Listen to me. See, qualified immunity ain't the problem. It's the interpretation of the law. Man. Okay. It's to me, it's not the qualified immunity that's the problem, because it says here, clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. How many of us know that if we fire blindly into a house, we're wrong? How many of us know that if we jump on top of somebody because we say we're scared for our lives, we choke them to death, we're still wrong? How many of us know we're together, Terry, Jason, Sedric. We're all together. We bust up in the house. We're civilians. I shoot somebody and they die. How many of us know that both of y'all going to get charged with the same murder? Why doesn't it apply to police officers? Because going by the definition of qualified immunity, they should be charged. So the problem, again, I'm having is they're policing. Police nowadays seems like, from my side, they're saying it's us against the world. It's me against the world, and the world's trying to get us. And I have a problem with that. And I think that qualified immunity, I'm going to be honest, the problem is not the qualified immunity. It's the enforcement of it. It's like any other law. It's the enforcement of it. So I'm having a huge problem with that. Huge. I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing it up, Terry. Thank you for bringing it up. But I think in our community that I truly believe that change has to come, and it stinks. Going back to the Breonna Taylor case, like, we don't know what the grand jury heard. We don't know anything about the testimony. We don't know anything. All we know is what they came up with, and absolutely nobody says anything. And then when I jump. My next thing I was thinking about, fellas, and you tell me if you guys are, tell me if you're on board with this, but I'm also thinking excessive force, excessive use of force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, that's something that I think you and I talked about. This is that you gotta. That's not what they're taught in the academy. When they're taught the proper way to do things in the academy. But what happens is when they get within their various districts, they develop alternate means of managing people.
They take up what's being taught. They take up the culture there, because what's funny, Terry, is you're right. But one of the statistics shows that black men are 21 times more likely than white men to be killed by cops.
Right.
Ain't that something? So
yeah, that's crazy.
So this whole thing about, but here's my question. We talked about excessive force, and excessive force is force that goes above and beyond the means necessary, just to keep it really simple. I mean, Like the one thing I say we can do is we can demand our local police departments change, but it all goes back to, for me, it goes back to that whole accountability piece, because they have to be accountable. And what I've heard in some police departments, not all, like I heard about a police officer, I forget where she was. I want to say it was in Maryland, but I forget where she was. She stopped her partner from abusing a young man, and she lost her job. And that happened 3 years ago, and she still don't have a job now.
Right.
Accountability, when they can't even hold each other accountable, but they can defend one another when they take a life for absolutely no reason.
Mm-hmm. It's a toxic culture within the police community. Like you said, they feel like it's them against the world, and they all have to stand united. And you hear about the blue wall and how these good cops won't say anything, because just like in your situation you just gave, that woman did the right thing, and no other police department will hire her, because now they feel like, oh, you're going to betray this, you're going to betray our trust. And to me, it's like, man, you've got a higher authority. You've got a higher responsibility. Your commitment should not be to the individual. It should be to the thing that you – I don't believe all cops are bad cops, but like you said earlier, if you know that's a dirty cop, and that's one of the things I get so frustrated. Most of the good cops know who the bad cops are. But I'm like, you do nothing to change what's going on. So you want the benefit of the doubt to be a good cop, but you're not going to clean up your own house. But you don't want me to apply all things to you and your house. I don't think that's right. I think they should be held to a higher standard. Said you talked to me about your military background and how, in the midst of war, how much standards you're held to. And it's sad to know that enemies of the country who have declared that you are an enemy, my job is to destroy you, have more rights than a citizen of the United States when dealing with another citizen. And I think that's completely and totally backwards. And I think that's completely and totally off. And I think they are given a higher responsibility. And I always say that a higher level of authority, And with that authority, you got a higher level of responsibility. You don't get to do what the average person do, because here's the deal. If I walk out and I say I'm in fear of my life and I shoot somebody, it ain't going to be like, okay, well, go sit at home. I'm going to pay you to sit at home, and we'll look at this, and then eventually you'll come back to your job. So when you talk about accountability and responsibility, I think they should be held to a higher standard.
So what's the solution for something like that? How do we hold them more accountable? How do we get to that point? How do we correct the problem of excessive force?
I think this kind of goes back to one of the reasons why the cops get away with what they get away with is too many people believe that they're justified in what they do, right? They see these officers, and I think they have respect for the officers and the fact that they put their life on the line for us. And unfortunately, sometimes that leads them to say, well, I'm going to let you get away with a little bit more, right? But usually the little bit more is against people not like them, right? People different from them, I think when we talk about accountability, I think there needs to be some real transparency. You said you and I talked about this. These cops all have cameras. And in every one of these situations, there's hardly ever a police camera available to see what really happened, right?
That's right.
There's hardly ever a police camera. And one of the things I heard, and cops know this, they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. People see that uniform, they're like, well, that person's not going to lie to me. And even when it's been proven in several times that they doctor reports, they flat out lie on reports, and they're able to do this. Yep. Forget about whatever the report's about. I know this. If I give a report to my boss that I know is false and it's a lie, and it paints a picture, I'm going to lose my job over that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
But that didn't happen.
And even if you didn't have them, you said what?
That didn't happen in the Breonna Taylor case.
Exactly.
They literally they falsified documents. They lied. They went.
Right, but again,
nobody got held accountable.
Right.
So I'll tell you like this: in a business world, that's called integrity, and they'll fire you over integrity. I don't care if anything didn't go wrong because of the report. The fact that you will lie on a document that you're handing to somebody else is an integrity issue, and for that reason alone, you don't work anymore. But our cops are held to a lesser standard,
And the reason is because they're afraid for their lives. But I've been deployed who knows how many times. And that's not a good excuse for us. See, I used to always tell my friends, one of the things I always talked about was a way to curb some of this. I'm talking about excessive force at this point, is improved training. You know what? Let's get better training. But then, like you said, Terry, when they go to their respective units or offices or precincts, they get retrained. They've been trained to do it the right way, and now they're going to get trained to do it the street way, right? I like to think of a system. I like to think of a system that I heard a long time ago. It was called By the Numbers, and there was 10 steps involved. If there were 10 steps involved, no matter how menial the task, no matter how small, you use steps 1 through 10, right? And steps 1 through 10 became a little bit time-consuming. So some of the employees start saying, well, we don't really need step 3, we don't really need step 5, we don't really need step 9. So they started skipping those 3 steps. And what this particular company found was the quality of the product they were putting out was not as good. Now, keep in mind that they only, and I didn't tell the story very well, but they only skipped these 3 or 4 steps is when they had a order that was very small. But on the bigger orders, the larger orders, they didn't skip any steps. So the QA started to find that where they were having the most problems was with the smaller orders. So I guess what I'm saying is when we have like police officers and things, and when we have people out in our communities, they're policing our communities, they're doing their jobs. When it comes to training, you can't skip steps because you never know when you need to use that bit of your training. And so for that reason, I say training is a huge issue. And I'm talking, and training covers a multitude of things. I'm talking racial bias. I'm talking their problem-solving skills. Has either one of you guys had an encounter with a police officer in the last few months? Any kind of encounter yourselves where you had to employ some problem-solving skills, where it wasn't just about hitting somebody upside the head and taking them to jail? You know, I told you guys a story that happened to me last month, and the police officer came up like he's ready to shoot everybody. And so I think we need to. I think our police departments truly need to, and I think us as citizens, we need to start going to the meetings. We need to start talking to our council members. We need to become more involved because this is horrible, and there are some problems that we have with police departments that a law may not fix. Maybe we need to have some sort of mediation with police departments. Have you guys been in a neighborhood where the police get out and they treat certain subdivisions differently than they do others? You know, things like that. I think that and this might seem like a really small thing, but depending on what city or town you live in, this could be the thing that fixes the problem. We need to have some sort of mediation between police and citizens. I'll give you, for instance, here in Louisville, Kentucky, when the quote-unquote black militias are out, when the black protesters are out, police are everywhere. But when you bring in Rob, Bobby, and Jim, the white militias, and the police are so lax. They get to walk around dressed up like police officers, right? Tactical gear, automatic rifles. Nobody says a word. They don't get treated any differently. And the police aren't. We had a freaking KKK rally at a park. Over 200 members. Do you think the police was at that park? Nope, they weren't. And actually, I take that back. It wasn't KKK. It was a white militia, a white supremacist militia. The police weren't there. So they're not treating our communities even fairly. And so some of these reforms, I mean, we really need some reforms in our police departments. And I think the biggest reforms are definitely going to be our racial bias training. I truly believe that because it stinks. It stinks. And most of the violence that happens in our communities because of happens to our young men is based on race. And the first thing that the other side says, yes, jump right in.
No, I don't go ahead. The first thing the other side says, go ahead, finish that and go out, and I'll jump right in.
The first thing the other side says, that's all y'all can talk about is race. That's all it is. Nobody's being racist. What if you weren't thugs? What if? What if? And that's the first thing they say.
Okay. Yeah, and I got to throw this out because, and this really has been sticking with me. W.E.B. Du Bois said a statement: "A system cannot fail those it was never built to protect." This system that we have, I think, Sedric, you even talked about the origins of the police department a while back. Could you? Yes. Yeah. Could you go ahead and could you elaborate on that again? Because this whole thing was never meant to protect us. Go ahead.
Well, quote unquote police departments, they derived from when after the Civil War, the Union Army was sent to the South to maintain peace and order. Well, once the South and the North struck a deal, the president at the time pulled all of the Union troops out of the South. Said, okay, now instead of protecting the newly freed slaves, they left them to the white people who were there who had white privilege. And basically blacks would, since they couldn't read and write, they would congregate on different street corners and whatnot. And the whole premise behind policing was, well, these black people, if they're caught loitering, is what they called it, and being vagrant, they would put them in jail. And so thus enforcing those rules, they started to hire people and deputize white men to control all these black people. And so thus the police department is really derived from a system just like that.
So was
and that's where they came from.
So was that system designed to help us or to help promote us? No, it wasn't. So the thing about it is, you got to go back to the core. If we're going to do any reforms, anything like that, we've got to go back to the core, to the beginning. I mean, I'm not saying that we've got to dismantle the police, there be anarchy. But what we do need to do, we need to go back and examine from the core our police departments. There has to be some uniform guidelines across the country that's the same. So if you go from Kentucky, Indiana, the same way, it's going to be enforced the same way. You know, things are going to be handled the same way. Even with the laws, the enforcement of the law. Yeah, all that stuff, stuff needs to occur.
If you think about what you just said, if there is a uniform, and I get it, some of the laws are going to be different, but there was a uniformed code. Like you join the military, there's this thing called the Uniformed Code of Military Justice. You'll hear them referred to as the UCMJ. It's a uniformed code, okay? Everybody sticks to the code, right? And it doesn't matter which branch of the service. I mean, there are some little things that are different, but you are 100% right. That's where we need to go to. At least that's where it needs to start. That there needs to be a beginning. We need to start changing these things somewhere, because I just don't understand how Dylan Roof can go kill 9 people and go to Burger King on his way to jail.
Can I say something
don't understand it.
I'm going to throw something else at you. The sad thing is that just like here, like what happened here in Louisville, we have an attorney general who could have made a difference, who literally could have made a difference in this whole matter. But because he trusts people that don't look like him to back him in the future, to promote him to possibly a Supreme Court position, he decided to take the easy way out and do the wrong thing versus doing the right thing. And so he could have done some things that really could have been revolutionary, where it could have really changed the police department, not just in Louisville, but set precedent for the whole country. And it could have started here. But because he put his political life above, and see, that's the problem that we're running into.
Was it his political life or was it his personal life?
It's personal and political. You can say it all. But you got to figure he could have made a change. But the thing about it is, we have people in positions of power that don't exercise and do the right thing. They do what's personal, and they do what's right in the eyes of someone else who holds more power above them.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I'm going to go ahead and put this out there, okay? I just want people to know how I feel. You're talking about the Attorney General in Kentucky, Daniel Cameron. I'm going to put his name out there. I'll tell you, the biggest problem with Daniel Cameron is too many people went to the polls and saw he was a black man and voted for him. That's the biggest problem with Daniel Cameron. I'm going to be honest. I saw his name. I looked up his politics. I said, ain't no way in the world I'm voting for this guy. But I'm telling you, I know quite a few people who voted for him because he was brown and he had a lot of melanin in his skin. And that's the first place we messed up. I just got to put that out. I can't go to sleep without that. But you're absolutely right. As Attorney General, he could have made a difference, and the difference he made wasn't a good difference. And another problem I have with policing again, it goes back to my big training issue. My training, I'm big on training. I'm like really, really big on training because when you train to do something, you train all these different situations, and there's usually not going to be many situations you don't come across. I think the police are not given enough training in certain areas, especially when it comes to Terry, you were talking to me before. This was a big one. One of the areas I think police need training, and the biggest way, and you can correct me on this, the mental health issues. Police don't know nothing about mental health. Why are they addressing these calls other than to come out and keep the peace and call in a mental health professional?
Mm-hmm. That's what should happen.
I mean, tell us
that's
how
what
that
should happen,
work.
but it doesn't.
Tell us how you. I mean, you're a mental health professional, so you know more about this. So tell us how you think that should go down. A call like that. I forget his name. God, Lord forgive me. He was. It was plain to see he was on drugs. He was naked in the street. The police wound up strangling him.
Yeah. He was in Rochester, New York. Basically, what really should be done if first of all, if you're a police officer, if you get a call on someone's running naked in the street, now you know something just may not be quite right there. And in Louisville pioneered this, but then they stopped doing it. They had the social workers and the police matched up, where there would be a social worker on every shift that rides with the police for any call. So if they did run across a situation like that, there wouldn't be one where you would have a police officer dealing with it, because the police officer is going to do what they did with that guy. They put a spit guard over his face. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't, he told him he couldn't breathe, but they handled him totally wrong. If you got a mental health professional that's out there in the field, they know how to address individuals like this. They know how, so look, we need to stay away from him. Let's call the hospital. Let's get them to come out, and let's get a mental inquest warrant, and let's get this guy the help that he needs. That's the way that happens. You don't see him as a perpetrator of a crime. You see him as a person that has needs. And that's when you have somebody that is trained in the area of mental health and in social services and social work. They see them as people that have needs, not somebody that is going to do any damage or try to hurt anybody on purpose.
Right. And so those are kind of things. I think these are the kind of things that everyday people like myself, we don't know this kind of stuff. Because, see, honestly, I'm thinking people with mental health issues, hey, you know what, put them in handcuffs. No, you ain't got to beat him. Put him in handcuffs and shackles, throw him in the back of the car, and take him down to the jail. But what you're saying, Terry, is no. Let's de-escalate this guy. Let's get a professional out to deal with this guy, de-escalate him, and let's get him to the proper help. Let's get him to the hospital where he can be helped. Instead, in his or her life.
Correct.
Man,
that is correct.
How I mean, in a scenario like that, when you got mental health professionals involved, you may not know any of this off the top of your head, but what's the likelihood of somebody, if a mental health professional is on scene, what's the likelihood of somebody having to go to jail or be killed? Doesn't that just lessen those odds quite a bit? It just seems to make a lot more sense to me. It seems to make a lot more sense to me rather than the way we do policing here. I tell you,
correct.
I think that another problem we have with our policing in some of our places, in some of our cities right now. I was reading an article. It was on it was with the Human Rights Watch group, and they talked about when they talked about police, they talked about instead of police addressing any social issues, that, like you said, Terry, we need to bring in the proper authorities. We need to make that shift from allowing police to handle these cases, and like even they talked about with homeless people. Instead of having police roll up on a bunch of homeless people, put them all in handcuffs and take them down to jail, they talk about getting organizations to come out and help with these people, getting them the right health care, getting them the right support, even with substance abuse. Instead of just dragging everybody with a substance abuse problem down to jail, instead of sending everybody to the hospital, they get them with social workers. They get them to help people, kind of like what they're doing now. You know, meth is a terrible thing, right? And y'all remember the days of crack back in the 80s, right? What happened to people who got caught with crack, who got caught using crack?
They got arrested. They got arrested.
Oh, that's right. They got jail sentences. Oh, you using crack? You get to go to jail. Oh, you black, you in the hood. You get to go to jail. But nowadays, they saying you got a heroin addiction, you on meth. Oh, well, we're going to give you this injection. We're going to make sure you don't die. We're going to take you to the hospital, and then we're going to get you the treatment you need. Right. Is that a welcome shift?
Again.
Is that a welcome shift?
Again, that's a wonderful welcome shift, but it needs to be across the board because that's not what's being instituted across the board. That's something that you see with people who have privilege. Okay, people whom are not always per se involved in the legal system. They give them that benefit of the doubt. They give them that, and that's something that we have not seen in our community. Like you said, you mentioned the whole crack addiction piece. We did not see that during that time, and honestly, that right there would have saved lives,
hundreds
major
of thousands
lives.
Even.
Yes.
A lot of men wouldn't have gone to jail.
Was not
right?
that was not afforded to us. And again, one of the things, it's about changing these systems, and what's happening is that people are getting in these positions. Like Daniel Cameron, he has the ideal position to help change the system for the better, but because he's putting his what he wants to do politically ahead of what's right, we're missing a major opportunity to really make a change for people of color, for people, period. Because this, like you said, this system was not designed or built for us.
That's right.
It was not. It was not built for us. But now we have people in positions of power that don't utilize it for the betterment of the whole community. This could benefit the whole community if he could just stand up and do what was right. If he could, I'm sorry, I just can't.
No, that's fine because I tell you what, when I think of other things about police departments, this is one that that a lot of people have a problem with. But I don't know about this one, other than the fact that I think that. What about this? Y'all remember this part right here? What if we stop police from getting involved in immigration laws? Why do we have police involved in immigration? That disturbs me. And the reason that disturbs me is they are not trained. You know, there was a officer back in Texas, back in the early 90s, I believe. He didn't speak Spanish, so he stopped these two Spanish guys who he thought they were going to work, but they were illegal, as we call them, illegal immigrants. And back then, you know, we called them aliens. But anyway, illegal immigrants. Well, he didn't speak Spanish. He didn't speak the language. So what they did was they communicated in Spanish to each other, and they jumped the officer when his back was turned, and they killed him. And my thing is this, and I bring that point up to say this. You know, the Mexican or the people coming across the border from the South in Texas have been paying the price for these two very vile individuals since the early 90s up until now, because nobody trusts them anymore. You know, I can't trust somebody who crossed the border illegally because what they did to my friend. And I think that how does ending police enforcement of immigration, how does that play into what I'm saying, and how does that story play out? Is that, our police officers, they can't be a catch-all for everything, and I think it's unfair to police departments even though they do a lot of things wrong. I only give them credit for showing up. I don't think they really try that hard, but I think that with all the things that I'm talking about, is we need to take some of the stress off of the police departments. They want to go home and they want to see their families, true enough. But if we can get them off of some of their duties, some of these details, they might have better lives. And here's the funny thing about cops. And I'm going to ask both of y'all this question. How many cops moonlight? They got more than one job.
Every cop I know does that. I mean, most every cop I knew that I knew does that.
Ain't that funny? How when they talk about how, like Amber Geiger talked about how tired she was working a 12-hour shift, that she went in and killed a man. But almost every cop I know, they have 2 and 3 jobs. How come we can't mandate them like they do in the military? As a soldier, you got to have permission to have the second job. You can't just go get a job as a DJ just because you want to make some extra money or just because you love DJing. You can't. You got to have permission from your commanding officer. Why aren't we policing that kind of stuff as well? Because, again, I'm talking about the overall safety of the community and the officer, he or she. I want everybody to be safe. And some of the reforms I want to talk about really are legitimate reforms that need to be, policing. Anything to do with policing, we need to talk about. But you know what? There's some things that don't necessarily pertain to policing that impacts the way they police. And I think all of these things are fair game. I think because the bad officers have brought this stuff to the forefront, I think everything is fair game now. Just as if I'm a drug dealer, everything in my house is fair game when they serve a warrant. And I think the thing about policing is we just gotta do something. And we as citizens, we gotta do our part. We can't just protest. We can't just complain. We have to do our part. And I think that it's not a bad idea to prioritize the people in the community. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad people in these communities. Don't get it twisted. But come on now. Is it really more bad citizens? Let's say per capita. I think the citizen and the police officer, I think we're all human beings. We're equally human, right? We all deserve certain things, right? I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're red, you're brown. It doesn't matter. And so when I think of policing, I think we really truly, if we can change up the way that our police approach our communities, I think we can stifle this crime. I think we can really take care of business here in this country. Until then, I just don't know what else. But either one of you guys have anything you want to leave us with, want to close out with us today?
No, just like I said, I think just like you, my heart is heavy, and just as this week gone by, just to hear, what was said and how they just justified it, and like you said, it was just really hard to hear. The only officer that got charged for what happened, for the bullets that happened outside the apartment. Like everything that happened inside that apartment was okay. Like everything that happened inside that apartment was just fine, and no one is held accountable to that. And it is tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's tough to constantly hear this and deal with this and try to. It just weighs heavy on the heart. It just weighs really heavy on the heart.
All right. Terry, you got anything you want to say?
I think Jason covered it for me. I think he really covered it. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I just want to say again that it's my hope, my prayer, my wish that we as citizens of this wonderful country continually hold not just the police departments, but our state and local governments, our federal governments accountable. And we need to demand justice. It's not just about demanding justice for people who are wrongfully killed or mistreated or incarcerated by cops, but let's get these bad cops out of here. Let's get the cops. Let's get I like to call them rogue cops. Let's get them out. And I don't think the system needs to show all this great mercy. I don't. And I truly believe that if we stay on top of this, you know, two things can be true, and we can definitely get rid of a lot of these people. I just believe that our country right now is going in a very ugly way, but it can be changed. It can stop. So with that being said, I just want to say, man, my heart's heavy for the families who are grieving because of all the violence in our country. My heart's heavy for the country because Donald Trump's still in office, but I ain't going to go that far. But I want to say, you know what we say here, we're about to close out. You know, find something you love, you embrace it, and you chase it, and that's your relentless pursuit. And this Mr. Sedric, I'm signing off today. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and God bless you, and we love you. Have a good night. Thanks, Jason and Terry.